Trust Fund.
Is there a point of order?
Point of order is reserved. Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his motion.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to offer an amendment to this bill. Passage of this amendment will not prevent the passage of the underlying bill. If it is adopted, my amendment will simply be incorporated into the bill, and the bill will immediately be voted upon. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if a question is appropriate, but is this February 2nd? Is this Groundhog Day? I'm curious. This is the 10th time this bill has been before the House. And those who are in support would argue, enough is enough, let's pass it and get on with it. Those of us in opposition would say, well, why haven't you written a bill that is sufficient to the problems raised by the pipeline? Specifically, for 10 times on this floor and even additional times in committee, the issue of the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund has been raised. We have raised that issue 10 times. It's been debated here on the floor. I've heard 5, 6 people speak to that issue. The chairman of the committee are well aware that this bill has a huge loophole in it, allowing one company that owns a pipeline to avoid paying into the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund. Why in the world would we move a bill that allows this company, unique among all others, to not participate in a very, very important part of the protection of communities and the environment? The Kalamazoo issue has been raised here, the spill, over $60 million having been spent, of which paid for by the Oil Spill Liability Fund and then reimbursed by the pipeline company. Let's do something right. I mean, this is great fun, back and forth, back and forth. We kick this thing around. We may get some political points on one side or the other, but why in the world don't we write a decent piece of legislation? Why don't we do it right? Why would we exempt one company among all of the others of hundreds of pipeline companies and allow this one Canadian company? And I love Canada. My son-in-law is a Canadian. This is about doing what's right. This amendment would simply include this company being required to participate in the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund. It's a lot of dollars. It's about $24 million a year. That's a pretty good tax break. Who among us would not like to have that tax break? I don't see any. Well, I guess we're all going to stand up because we want to have it. The rest of the story is this. We have spent an enormous amount of time on this issue when, in fact, as has been said here many times by proponents and opponents, we ought to get on to real infrastructure. Consider the time spent on this issue when you consider the time that has been spent on transportation bills on this floor. Consider the time that we must spend figuring out how to pay for repairing our bridges, building our highways, our ports, our airports. Consider that time. 10 times this bill has been here. 10 times this House has ignored a tax break that is not warranted, has allowed to move forward to the Senate a bill that in its very substance provides an unwarranted, unnecessary, and grossly unequal tax break to one company among all the other pipelines. This amendment simply comes to the point of making sure that this pipeline company, like every other petroleum pipeline company in America, pays its fair share of the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund, which is essential. And I see some of my friends from Michigan here. You know how important this is. The Kalamazoo River, a big deal. $60 million thus far and more to come. The Oil Spill Liability Fund was there to provide the early money for the cleanup. It's important, folks. My colleagues, this is important. Let's do it right. This is our 10th time. Let's do it right. Adopt this amendment. We clear up one problem in the bill. We remove one point of opposition, and we do what's right. I ask for your aye vote.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
I would ask for the 5 minutes in opposition to the motion to recommit.
The gentleman withdraw his
I
reservation.
withdraw my point of order.
The point of order is withdrawn. Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the motion to recommit, and I would just say that to all my colleagues, our side, we certainly view this as a procedural issue, not as a real amendment. I would say that in the markup that we had on this bill in earlier years, I pledged to work with Ms. Capps on our committee to find a solution that would be fair to the bill. I support the concept of what the gentleman is doing, but in fact, I sent a letter in 2012 to then Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Dave Camp, asking for help on this, and we were hoping that we would see tax reform, comprehensive tax reform, and this would have been included as part of that. But that did not happen. We didn't get tax reform. So as this bill comes forward, a review does have to be made in terms of how to treat crude oil derived from oil sands for the purposes of the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund. But I have to say that really is a Ways and Means issue, not a transportation issue, not an energy and commerce issue. Now, I know that this issue is going to be raised in the Senate with an amendment probably in the next week. I would just say to the gentleman and those that support this idea, I look forward to working with our Senate colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, as well as Republicans and Democrats in this body, to in fact address this situation that does need to happen. But as a motion to recommit, we shouldn't do it now. So let my Democrats friends vote yes. I would urge my Republicans on this side to vote no. I just want to give them the assurance that, in fact, as this bill moves into the conference, as to what I expect to happen, that I certainly intend to see an understanding go forward. Not at this point. I would yield to my colleague, the chairman of the Transportation Committee.
I thank the gentleman, and I'm in agreement with the chairman of Energy and Commerce. This is again something to be dealt with on a tax bill. Two things, though, that could have happened today. One, the Nebraska Supreme Court has removed the final hurdle to move this bill forward. And number two, my good friend from California and I agreed today on something. This thing should be dealt with, but this is not the place or the time to deal with it. And moving forward, we want to make sure that this is dealt with in the proper way, and I believe that the Ways and Means Committee will do that. I'll yield.
Thank you so very much. I have enormous respect for the two of you, and this issue has been before us many, many times. If we wait for comprehensive tax reform, the tar sands may be totally eliminated and used up. We have an opportunity today to do it right. Thank you for the yielding.
Reclaiming my time. We understand that this will not be part of a comprehensive tax reform bill. We need to act earlier than that. With the Senate now passing a bill in all likelihood next week, likely with an amendment addressing this situation, we can deal with it as part of that conference report, and I look forward to supporting that and the inclusion of such in the final package. And I would again urge my colleagues to vote no on the procedural motion to recommit so that we can get to final passage and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, I request the ayes and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the Chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of passage of the bill. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House wraps up debate on approving the Keystone